Chapter 17-18. Song retracted his claws and fangs decisively. Tell me, why are you following us? Do you want to attack us? Chen Zhao stared at the two monsters with a cold expression. It wasn't that they were weak. Itachi was a rather famous monster in Japanese mythology. He wasn't that weak either. However, they were short of one. Moreover, they were facing a large group of people. Their aura was extremely weak. They had no other choice but to pretend to be pitiful. We want to borrow your demon knife. Song looked at Chen Zhao, trembling. Borrow? Are you that elegant? Are you planning to steal or rob? Chen Zhao had seen them kill and rob on the streets. They didn't show mercy at all. Of course, Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered to argue with them. This was Japan anyway. It had nothing to do with him. Unless it was like now, plotting against him. Otherwise, he wouldn't care at all. Japan's spirit world was different from North America's. The Japanese mainly dealt with monsters by suppressing or purifying them. To them, it didn't matter how many people a monster killed. The more ferocious a demon was, the more merit one would gain if they were purified. North America was mostly dominated by evil spirits. There would be some disturbances from other monsters or magical beasts. Furthermore, as long as it was an evil spirit or a magical beast that had taken human life, it would basically be hard for it to escape death. The two regions had different standards. Of course, it was also because they had different views. So, Chen Zhao didn't care how many people these two monsters killed. In Japan, there were no monsters that didn't kill people. The only difference was how many or how few they killed. Otherwise, they would be the kind that couldn't even beat normal people. What do you want the demon knife for? Are you going to start a massacre? It wasn't that Chen Zhao looked down on them. With their strength, let alone the fact that they would be controlled by the demon blade if they took it. Even if they could maintain their sense of self, they wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. In less than half a day, they would be suppressed. Especially since this was Tokyo, the place with the most spiritualists and supernatural organizations. No, we want to use the demon knife to find our brother Yao. What does finding your brother have to do with stealing the demon knife? Every bewitching blade has a special ability, hunt. Tsang said, as long as it is stained with the blood of the prey, even if the prey escapes to the ends of the earth, the demon blade will still be able to find it. Do you have your brother's blood? Yes. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. What do I get out of helping you find your brother? Our brother has medicine. He has a medicine pouch. The medicine in that medicine pouch can quickly heal external injuries. He didn't want anything to happen to his family. The moment West took the demon blade, his body turned into a warrior. West's body instantly turned into a warrior, releasing a red demonic aura. Everyone stared at West warily. After all, they weren't sure if West could keep his mind. West, how are you now? West opened his eyes silently and turned to Chen Zhao. I'm fine. The demon blade didn't affect my mind. Chen Zhao realized that West's reaction was much smaller than he'd imagined. He felt that even without the soul pendant and More Raz's spell, West could probably resist the demon blade's control. Chen Zhao didn't expect West to be so mentally strong. Can you feel where the medicine is? West wiped the blood on the demon blade and sniffed it. Then he nodded. Yes. Great, where is he? Where is he now? Tsang and Sickle asked impatiently. Chapter 17-19. Chen Zhao followed West, as did Scythe and Tsang. West, you don't seem to need external protection, Chen Zhao said curiously. You're still immune to the demon's control. President, it's actually very simple. Think of Devil Blade's mental corruption as a virus. He can invade and control a human's brain, and a human's brain is like a Microsoft system. However, this virus can't invade every system. Coincidentally, my system is different from a normal person's. West laughed. It was different from Chen Zhao, who completely blocked the power of the demon blade. West, on the other hand, was completely immune. The results of both were the same. But the method was different. West, are you an alien? West rolled his eyes. Sickle and Song were anxious. They really wanted to urge Qin Zhao and West to speed up. But Qin Zhao and West were not in a hurry at all. They took their time. Oh right, why did that Song Yuanhuang ask you guys to rob for him? He should have that ability, right? To be honest, as long as spiritualists were unscrupulous, it was not difficult to earn money. Moreover, he was a bad person to begin with. Song Yuanhuang shouldn't have such a psychological burden, right? West rolled his eyes at Qin Zhao. President, can we not ask such stupid questions? What? Is that a stupid question? Chen Zhao didn't even realize that he had asked a stupid question. If he didn't know, he just didn't know. The transaction between a spiritualist and an ordinary person must be an equivalent exchange. Of course, employment is also a type of equivalent exchange. If a spiritualist uses extreme means to plunder the wealth of an ordinary person, then he will be punished, and it will be a punishment from fate. Supernatural creatures can't use human money directly, West said. They can only be given, and it has to be the money of the dead. In other words, the two of them have to kill the person before they can steal the money and give the money to the primordial wilderness Zangyi. That's the process. The two of them will bear the consequences. That Zangyi Yuanhuang will enjoy the final benefit. West nodded. Chen Zhao thought about it. That seemed to be the case. Generally speaking, supernatural creatures did not have the habit of using human currency. This seemed to be restricted by the rules. For example, the evil spirit group in the association always asked their followers to pay for their purchases. Only a weirdo like Zangyi Yuanhuang, who was half human and half demon. There was the restriction of a demon, but also the desire of a human. He was driven by Tamamo no Mei, but he also wanted to break free from her restraints. To be honest, the 1,000 years without Tamamo no Mei was probably the most carefree life he had ever had. A long life, a prosperous life, and the power to do as you please. Chen Zhao was a little envious. Of course, Zangyi Yuanhuang didn't really do whatever he wanted. They couldn't determine the exact location in a short time. After a while, West opened his eyes. President, his only request is that you don't destroy him. Did you agree? My request is that he must unconditionally obey the orders of everyone in the association and lend his power to them. Also, he can't corrupt their consciousness. What did he say? He said that if we want to borrow his power, we have to see blood. Otherwise, he'll become weaker and weaker. Devil Blades all had the ability to kill. This was how they existed for a long time. The more they killed, the stronger they became. For example, Chen Zhao had used it twice before without killing. The Devil Blade was consuming its own power. If this went on, it would become an ordinary blade. Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. All the shrines had sent their elites to set up enchantments here. The Tokyo Grand Shrine's encampment was to the southeast of Aoki Plains Forest. 30 spiritualists set up a barrier here. The leader was a girl who looked like a high school student. In fact, she was a high school student and a candidate for the Grand Shrine of Tokyo. Nagasaka Reiko, the daughter of the monk Seiwa. She was also the granddaughter of Yoko Shirai. In Japan, most of the shrines were managed and passed down through the family inheritance method. Of course, normally, the shaman and the abbot were the leaders. One was in charge of internal affairs, while the other was in charge of external affairs. However, the two belonged to two completely different priesthood systems. One was Shinto, mainly serving the Tianjin gods who were led by the Amaterasu great god. The other was Buddhist, of course, serving the Buddha. However, this kind of combination wasn't rare in Japanese shrines. Although there were religious conflicts in Japan, they weren't fierce. They would even merge with each other. The Tokyo Grand Shrine wasn't an exception. The shamans were like the spokespersons of God, so most of the time, their words represented the will of God. Some shrines' shamans were specific. In order to maintain the purity of the bloodline, they would use intermarriage within the clan to give birth. Just like the Japanese royal family, the royal family in the past used intermarriage within the clan to ensure the purity of the bloodline. The Tokyo Grand Shrine didn't have such a requirement. For example, the current shaman, Yoko Shirai, was an outsider. However, Yoko Shirai herself was an extremely powerful spiritualist. Plus, she had an illustrious background and was also Zhang Tianyi's student. To put it bluntly, she was equivalent to returning from studying in the spiritual world. Therefore, it was only natural for her to marry into Changban and take over the position of shaman. Damn it, the miasma is expanding outward again. Nagasaka Reiko cursed. Retreat 1 kilometer. Although they had set up a barrier here to prevent the spread of the miasma. But the effect was not obvious. Miss, the miasma is growing especially fast this time. I'm afraid 1 kilometer is not enough. We have to retreat at least 5 kilometers. The one who spoke was Nagasaka Reiko's henchman. Every generation of shamans had their own henchmen and followers. It was similar to the change of government. Those in power would have their own leadership team. Of course, to subdue henchmen and followers, one needed enough ability and personal charm. Then retreat 5 kilometers. Nagasaka Reiko said with an ugly expression. By the way, report the situation here to Grandma. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion in front of them. What's going on? A group of monsters wants to break through our line of defense and enter the miasma. Damn bastards, destroy them all for me. Nagasaka Reiko had a fiery temper, and she was in a depressed mood. Just like in human society, there was also worship among monsters. There were always some monsters who felt that the appearance of Tamamo no Mae could change the situation of monsters. Therefore, they couldn't wait to pledge their loyalty to her. This was not the first group of monsters. Before this, there were several groups of monsters who also had the same idea. At this moment, a bird monster in the sky rushed into the mist. Not long after the bird monster disappeared into the miasma, a miserable scream was heard. A bunch of idiots. Nagasaka Reiko said with a black face. These monsters also couldn't escape the misfortune of entering the miasma. They thought that they could hug the thigh, but in fact, they would only become nourishment for the stone of slaughter. Would Tamamo no Mae care about the loyalty of these ants? Obviously not. To him, these weak little monsters were no different from humans in essence. At this time, the miasma spread out a bit more. Nagasaka Reiko quickly retreated with her people. If they also fell into the miasma, it would be very troublesome. There was only one person who could freely enter and exit the miasma, Zhang Tianyi. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1722. Early in the morning, Chen Zhao did not expect Zhang Tianyi to come at this time. Chen Zhao. Zhang Tianyi looked at the sumptuous breakfast before him and his face darkened. Is this what you eat every day? More accurately, it's breakfast. Last night, we found 3 corpses in the suburbs. They were all powerful monsters and confirmed to be 3 of Tamamo no Mae's 4 generals. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. You did it. Yes. Didn't you say that killing the 4 generals could stop Tamamo no Mae from appearing? They happened to be together. It was a rare opportunity, so I killed them. Chen Zhao asked, What? Is Tamamo no longer going to appear? You came all the way here to thank me. Zhang Tianyi smiled wryly. It's not that Tamamo no longer will appear, but that she'll be unsealed earlier. What? It didn't work. Chen Zhao asked. No, we all fell for it. Stopping the 4 generals can stop Tamamo no Mae from appearing, but it's actually Tamamo no Mae's scheme. I don't understand how this has anything to do with her. I didn't either, but the 3 generals you killed had remnants of Tamamo no Mae's demonic aura on them. And then they were born because of Tamamo no Mae. Tamamo no Mae left monster chi on them. Before she was sealed, she purposely said that their appearance would cause her to come out. That's not wrong, though. Zhang Tianyi bitterly smiled and shook his head. Because once they appear, the spirit realm will do everything in their power to hunt them down, and their demonic chi will return to Tamamo no Mae. Now that Tamamo no Mae is sealed in the Stone of Slaughter, the demonic chi has become masterless. It will attack the seal on the Stone of Slaughter from the outside, forcing the seal to collapse even faster. With both the inside and the outside working together, Tamamo no Mae will appear earlier. So you're here to denounce me for my crimes. Do you think I dare? Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. You're the main force this time. Are you prepared? When do you think Tamamo no Mae will appear? It won't be more than 3 days. As for the exact time, it's not up to us to decide. It's up to Tamamo no Mae to decide. She can come out whenever she wants. Let me ask you something, Chen Zhao said. What? Is this Tamamo related to the 9-tailed fox in China? I don't know. Zhang Tianyi thought that Chen Zhao was going to ask something. Rumor has it that Tamamo no Mae is a 9-tailed fox from China. She came to Japan to cause trouble. However, this was only a rumor. There was no concrete evidence. Also, it was rumored that Tamamo no Mae was a man. However, it seemed like even the Japanese could not prove it. This was because no matter where they were in Japan, 9-tailed fox or Tamamo no Mae would always appear as a woman. Furthermore, the 9-tailed fox was rumored to be the fox of Green Hill. It wasn't a mountain spirit or a wild monster. No matter how terrifying Tamamo no Mae was, she was still a legendary existence. But now, they were about to witness history, an existence that only existed in history and legends. At this moment, another strong earthquake occurred on the ground. On Mount Fuji in the distance, the snow on the top of the mountain caused the rocks to tumble down. Very soon, it became a landslide. An even stronger demonic aura emanated from the forest of the Greenwood Plains. At the same time, the miasma shrunk again. However, in the area that had been covered by the miasma, the leaves had withered. There was no vitality at all. Another group of people came from behind, but they weren't from the shrine. They weren't even Japanese. Instead, they were spiritualists from other countries. There were quite a few of them too. Judging from their skin and hair color, they could form a United Nations. Ms. Yoko, hello. One of the older priests walked over. He seemed to know Hikari Yoko. Father Oker, you're here, Hikari Yoko called out in surprise and joy. Although this place isn't illuminated by the Lord's light, the lambs here also enjoy the Lord's glory. They can't be blasphemed by evil. Father Oker's words sounded more like a missionary. Those who didn't know might even think that he was a devout priest. In truth, Father Oker had already been expelled from the headquarters due to his presumptuous contact with heretical magic. 9 Heavens God Emperor. Chapter 1723. Although the church was also one of the three major religions in this world, they were more resistant to foreign religions. They felt that other religions were all heresy and that other gods were all evil gods. Father Ochre was, of course, a staunch shepherd of the Lord. However, he felt that the magic or spells of other religions had their merits. Simply put, Father Ochre was a believer of God, but not a believer of the church. When it came to upholding justice, he was almost impeccable. For example, this time, the seal on the Japanese Rock of Slaughter had loosened. He directly brought people to help. Although the Japanese spiritual world had already sent out a request for help to the entire world. But Father Ochre came purely on his own accord. Not long after, another group of spiritualists arrived. This time, all of them had blonde hair and blue eyes. Vestana rubbed her nose. The place was filled with an unpleasant smell. She smelled demonic aura. Even though she wasn't a spiritualist, she still smelled demonic aura. The demonic aura here was so thick that even ordinary people could smell it. She and the psionic team already saw a large group of spiritualists in front of them. However, they didn't go up to greet them. This was her first time leading a team on a mission abroad. However, as soon as they arrived in Japan, the Japanese spiritual world sent out a request for help. This forced them to change their plans. Of course, this time in Japan. Vestana also realized the difference between a spiritual desert and a spiritual peak. During the first 2 days of her arrival, she was still somewhat proud. Then, she found a few Japanese spiritual organizations and communicated with them. The process was quite pleasant. After all, the Japanese paranormal organizations had treated them warmly after receiving the money. However, they didn't want to be treated warmly. They wanted to communicate. Of course, it wasn't that there was no communication at all. However, through this communication, Vestana felt similar to the feelings of the Chinese football fans. The other party also pointed out their shortcomings. For example, the members of the psionic team were too simple. Their individual strength couldn't be said to be very weak. They could only be considered average. However, when they teamed up for battle, their cooperation was almost non-existent. If it was a one-on-one battle, they could still fight back and forth. They could win 2 or 3 out of 10 battles. However, if it was a team battle, it was simply unsightly. The other party won almost every battle with an absolute advantage. They even won with 0 casualties. Vestana made up her mind to look for an Eastern instructor when she returned. With enough money, he would definitely be able to find a powerful instructor. Dongfang. Miss Vestana, the man in front seems to be waving at us, Brit said. But her spiritual retainer was telling her to run, run. This was the first time Chio Kori's spiritual retainer had lost its composure and panicked. In the past, she had also encountered strong enemies. But even the legendary monsters, her spiritual retainer had never retreated. As long as she needed it, it would always fight bravely for her. But this time, her spiritual retainer was not normal. Just how terrifying was the legendary Tamamo no Mei? She could actually scare her spiritual retainer like this. Oh, Miss Chio, you're here too. Chio Kori heard an annoying voice. Turning around, she saw Chen Zhao walking over with his hands in his pockets. What are you doing here? Watching the show, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. Chio Kori looked at him unkindly. Aren't you afraid of dying here? I won't die. Chen Zhao grinned. Kori, is he your enemy? Do you need our help? Mitsuki Kishimoto asked in a low voice. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1724. Chio Kori and her companions were all on the same side. Years of revolutionary friendship had made them trust each other. They were all pointing their guns at the same time. Therefore, Chen Zhao seemed a bit weak when facing the 5 of them. Are you sure you want to fight me here? That's not a smart choice. Chen Zhao looked at the 5 with an annoying smile. It doesn't take much effort to take care of you. Little Devil had already taken out a pair of katanas. Mr. Chen, do you need help? West Anna walked over with her people. Of course, she wasn't here to help Chen Zhao. She was here to watch the show. She didn't know how strong these Japanese spiritualists were. It would be great if they could teach Chen Zhao an unforgettable lesson. However, she had clearly underestimated Chen Zhao's shamelessness. Of course. I'm glad you came to help me. Thank you so much. I'll leave them to you, Chen Zhao said decisively. West Anna and the members of the psionic ability team were all unhappy. Very unhappy. Rumble, just then, there was another earthquake. This time, it was much stronger than before. Many people couldn't stand still. To the Japanese, they had long since gotten used to this feeling of being shaken at the slightest provocation. But foreigners might not be used to it. The miasma had shrunk even more. The demonic aura in the air was much thicker. However, this earthquake gave Vestana an excuse to get away. We should fight against the evil monsters together instead of wasting our power on internal fights, Westana said righteously. Of course, if you insist on fighting, we won't interfere, Vestana said sternly. Chen Zhao couldn't help but give her the middle finger. Fuck, that pitiful university student had become so cunning. Were all politicians so shameless? Chen Zhao didn't think that he had also become the kind of people he hated the most, rich people. At this moment, the sky began to darken. At this moment, everyone present could not help but look up. Solar eclipse. Chen Zhao frowned. Was this a coincidence? No matter how strong Tamamo was, she couldn't change the trajectory of the celestial bodies. If she was really strong enough to change the stars, then Chen Zhao had to admit that he lost. In that case, he had to admit that he had lost. The probability of people seeing a total solar eclipse was much lower than a lunar eclipse. The lunar eclipse could be seen by half of the people on Earth. However, because the moon blocked the sun during a total solar eclipse, the moon's shadow was visible during a total solar eclipse. Through the moon's shadow, it was reflected on Earth with a diameter of more than 100 kilometers. In other words, when a solar eclipse occurs, only people within a radius of more than 100 kilometers will be able to see the total solar eclipse. People outside this area could only see a partial solar eclipse at most. Therefore, Chen Zhao felt that the probability of this coincidence was too low. But it really happened. There was another possibility. Tamamo no Me had already calculated the time of the eclipse. The shadow was slowly eroding towards the sun. Gradually, the entire land was plunged into darkness. When the sun was completely covered, the outer corona could still be seen. However, the corona did not last long. The moment the shadow completely enveloped the corona, true darkness descended. A gust of wind blew through the center of the Greenwood Plain. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Everyone knew that a peerless demon had been born. A huge figure the size of a small mountain appeared in the center of the Greenwood Plain. Chen Zhao looked over. It was a body even larger than Amanda Didier. A nine-tailed demon fox. Boundless demonic aura spread out from the nine-tailed fox's body. The trees around Chen Zhao were blown down by the wind. Then, an even more shocking scene appeared. Mount Fuji erupted without warning. Crimson magma and volcanic ash burst out and soared into the sky. The sky was immediately covered by volcanic ash. It was too fast. Before the eclipse was over, the volcanic ash had already covered the sky. At that moment, be it the Japanese spiritualists or the reinforcements, they were all stunned by this shocking scene. Was this the phenomenon caused by the appearance of a peerless demon? Formation. Yoko Hakui, who was at the front, yelled. The people from the Tokyo Grand Shrine formed a huge formation. The outermost were the monk soldiers. In the center were the 5 witches. Yoko Hakui stood in the center and took a golden bow from her shoulder. Wheat ears were carved on both sides of the bow. The bowstring seemed to be made of hemp. Chen Zhao looked at the Tokyo Grand Shrine's formation. He didn't understand formations, but it didn't stop him from observing the flow of magical power. All the monk soldiers and witches poured magical power into Yoko Hakui at the same time. Yoko Hakui slowly pulled the bowstring. There were no arrows on the bowstring. However, Hakui Yoko had condensed the purest mana into a golden arrow. Just then, the huge 9-tailed fox noticed the commotion. But he didn't stop it. Instead, he watched the Tokyo Grand Shrine form the formation and Yoko Hakui pull the bow. Suddenly, 2 huge nets appeared on both sides of the 9-tailed fox. The nets rose from the left and right sides and merged into an even larger net, covering the 9-tailed fox. This was a premeditated ambush from the shrines on both sides. Yoko Hakui's eyes flashed and she released the bowstring. The golden arrow turned into a beam of light and shot toward the 9-tailed fox. Whoosh! Wherever the golden arrow passed, the forest was split open. That was an indescribable arrow that carried with it a mighty force that could destroy anything. The 9-tailed fox lowered its head and suddenly opened its mouth. Roar! In an instant, the roar erupted like a monstrous wave. The golden arrow disappeared before it could even touch the 9-tailed fox. The trees in front of the 9-tailed fox were uprooted. The area within a few kilometers had become a barren wasteland. Not a single blade of grass could be seen. Everyone in the vicinity had already disappeared. The Tokyo Grand Shrine's formation also collapsed. The dozen monk soldiers didn't even have a complete corpse. The witches in the inner circle all spat out a mouthful of blood. Hikari Yoko's face showed a hint of decline, and her body was on the verge of collapse. The 9-tailed fox's 9 tails slapped the ground heavily. In an instant, the ground within a radius of several kilometers began to crack. The cracks spread like a spider web. Many spiritualists fell into the cracks. Everyone was shocked by the scene. This is Tamamo no Mae. Vistana's face was filled with shock. This monster. Could humans really fight against it? God Emperor of the 9 Heavens. Chapter 1725. Following that, the dark clouds in the sky rumbled, and rocks carrying scorching lava fell from the sky. Just like a meteor shower, if they were separated by a screen. If it was through a screen, it would definitely be a beautiful scene. However, when one was personally there, one would experience a hellish feeling. Chio Kori looked at the falling rocks. This is the end of the world. This was a battle that couldn't go on. What they were facing wasn't a real monster at all. It was nature. They weren't thinking about how to defeat Tamamo. They were thinking about how to survive. Hundreds of spiritualists had died in the earth-shattering battle. The others were just struggling to survive. Chio Kori, Little Devil, Kishimoto Mitsuki, Murata Yoshino, and Sakurako wanted to escape. But the ground in front of them had cracked into an island. They were trapped on a piece of land that was less than 30 square meters. There was a bottomless chasm around them. Chen Zhao also looked at the collapsing sky and earth. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Amazing." Unimaginably powerful, whether Chen Zhao was willing to admit it or not. The power of the fox demon was beyond his imagination. At this time, Yoko and the people from Tokyo Grand Shrine once again formed a formation. They knew the difference in power was too great. But they still didn't plan to retreat. Because they knew that they couldn't retreat. They were less than 200 kilometers away from Tokyo. Once the nine-tailed fox approached Tokyo, the casualties wouldn't be dozens or hundreds. It would be tens or hundreds of thousands of people. To be honest, Chen Zhao quite admired them. Putting aside the historical and political issues, this was the first time. No matter which country. They all had their own noble people. Confrontation. A huge confrontation rune rose and hit the nine-tailed fox's head. The nine-tailed fox shrieked in pain. The nine-tailed fox waved its tails, shaking the earth. In the distance, another rune rose in the forest of Aoki Plain. It was the Bing rune. The rune slammed heavily onto the nine-tailed fox's body. The nine-tailed fox raised its head and howled. Another fighting rune rose. Then, it was Shi, Jia, Shen, Lai, Zai, Qian. The 9 words mantra was a Chinese Taoist mantra spell. It was also known as the 6 Jia secret blessing. It came from the 17th volume of Biopuzi, the 5th paragraph. However, the 9 words of Sanskrit was only known to people because it was mentioned in Japanese anime. In fact, the 9 secret words were pure Taoist incantations. The different word orders of the 9 secret words would produce different effects. If they were arranged in order, it would be the holy word. Writing it normally could dispel nightmares and ward off ghosts and evil spirits. If he used his magic power and spiritual power, he would have the power to subdue demons. Now, the 9 shrines were working together to form the Great Array of Truth. Its power could be said to be top-notch. The nine-tailed fox was slapped by the 9 words incantation, and in an instant, it went berserk. Nine-tailed fox's front paw slammed heavily on the ground. In an instant, a giant claw burning with black flames descended from the sky. The members of the 9 shrines started chanting loudly. The 9 secret words regrouped and turned into a giant golden palm, rising from the bottom. It happened to collide head-on with the giant claw burning with black flames. Bang! A terrifying power rippled in the air. The giant golden palm suddenly turned into specks of starlight. The giant claw that was burning with black flames was still unscathed as it landed on the ground. The impact brought with it black flames, which spread in all directions. The first to bear the brunt of the impact was the array formed by the 9 shrines. Under the impact, it was almost non-existent. The Great Array of Truth collapsed instantly. The spiritualists who were trapped here watched the battle that was like a battle between gods. Everyone was deeply shocked by this. Some people managed to escape, but only a few. More than half of them had died in the earth-shattering battle when the nine-tailed fox was born. Many others died in the battle between the nine-tailed fox and the 9 shrines. Right now, the 9 shrines also suffered heavy casualties. The black flames couldn't be extinguished once they touched a person. It was fox fire. Legend had it that it could burn anything. Only the rain of Green Hill could extinguish fox fire. Chen Zhao walked up to Hikari Yoko. Hikari Yoko lay on the ground weakly. Her son, Seiwa, had already been reduced to ashes in the first wave of impact. She had a chance to protect herself. After all, everyone in the Tokyo Shrine had focused their magic on her. She couldn't say that she could fight against the nine-tailed fox, but she could protect herself. But she had to protect her granddaughter, Nagasaka Reiko. She used most of her magic to protect Nagasaka Reiko. Now, she was heavily injured. Nagasaka Reiko hugged Hikari Yoko. "Ms. Yoko, you don't look good." Hikari Yoko raised her head slightly and looked at him weakly. "Mr. Chin. Why are you here? That's strange." Is it hard to understand why I'm here? I thought you left already, Hikari Yoko said honestly. She'd seen his power, so it was definitely possible that he'd escaped. Hikari Yoko looked up at the nine-tailed fox. Teacher. Why isn't teacher here? Teacher. Where are you? Hikari Yoko yelled in grief. She felt that only Zhang Tianyi could turn the situation around. But to her disappointment, Zhang Tianyi didn't appear. Her yell attracted the nine-tailed fox's attention. Nine-tailed fox didn't forget Hikari Yoko. She'd been causing trouble for her ever since she came out of the Stone of Slaughter. Nine-tailed fox's bloody mouth descended from the sky, biting at Hikari Yoko and Nagasaka Reiko. Chapter 1726. The nine-tailed fox was gone. A woman walked out of the black fire. She was barefoot and had long legs. She wore a light muslin dress with a low collar. Her breasts were faintly discernible. Although her figure was not exaggerated to the point of exploding, it gave people a feeling that it was just right. Of course, to use the most popular saying, that pair of long legs could be played for a year. Her face was like jade. She was breathtakingly beautiful and had a hint of feminine charm. Her hair reached her waist and she wore a pair of white jade bracelets on her arms. Her hands were slender as if they didn't have any bones. Of course, the most eye-catching thing was the 9 furry tails on her back. What do you think? What do I look like? Tamamonome stood before everyone and stared at Chen Zhao. Beautiful, Chen Zhao said honestly. But I guess people in your era never saw a beauty, so any woman can be called a peerless beauty. Tamamonome was indeed unbelievably beautiful, but it was an exaggeration to say that she was devastatingly beautiful. Besides, if she really had a devastatingly beautiful face, she would not have been sealed in the Stone of Slaughter in the end. Hearing Chen Zhao's words, Tamamonome's 9 tails curled up. Tamamonome's body floated up, breaking free from gravity. Her eyes glowed purple and her long hair moved without any wind. Now, you can die. One moment, she was as light as a breeze. The next moment, she was like a mountain crashing down. Everyone felt a boundless pressure. Chen Zhao twisted his neck. That's right. Since you don't have a peerless beauty, let's fight for real now. Mortal, Tamamonome said softly and raised 2 fingers. A black flame swept across the ground. It shot up from Chen Zhao's feet and ignited his body. When everyone looked at Chen Zhao, they all thought that he would definitely die. However, Chen Zhao didn't seem to feel anything. Let's both show our true abilities. You show your real body, and I show my trump card. This is a meaningless test. Even if we fight until the end of time, we won't be able to decide the winner. I underestimated you. But if you want to force me to show my real body, let's see what you can do. Tamamonome didn't want to kill Chen Zhao because of his words. Definitely not. She just wanted to kill him. He just wanted to kill Chen Zhao. That was all. Ms. Yoko, you really should leave this place. Otherwise, I can't guarantee your safety. Hikari Yoko had long since lost all thoughts of running for her life. To her, not dying in battle here was a dereliction of duty on her part. Chen Zhao shook his head, seeing that she wasn't going to leave. Then her life and death had nothing to do with him. Chen Zhao's figure flashed and disappeared. The next moment, Chen Zhao grabbed one of Tamamonome's tails. However, Tamamonome's reaction was incomparably fast. She turned around and swiped with her claws. A piece of Chen Zhao's chest was torn off. In pain, Chen Zhao punched through Tamamonome's chest, grabbed her heart, and pulled it out. Tamamonome flew backward. Chen Zhao also took a few steps back. Tamamonome looked down at her empty chest and then at her heart in Qin Zhao's hand. Qin Zhao casually crushed the heart, muttering to himself. What a freak. His heart had been dug out, but he didn't show the slightest change in expression. Tamamonome licked the blood on her hand. The hole in her chest was closing up. Qin Zhao's chest was also healing. Hikari Yoko, Nagasaka Reiko, Chio Keiru, and the others all stared at Qin Zhao, dumbfounded. What had just happened? Had that guy crushed Tamamonome's heart? He hadn't lost in that exchange. Tamamonome raised one arm high. She grabbed at the sky and then pulled it down. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly seemed to be ignited. All the dark clouds in the sky turned red. Then, stones that had been ignited fell from the sky at a super high speed. They had accurately locked onto Qin Zhao's position. Fist shadows. Qin Zhao waved his fists that filled the sky. The stones that had been ignited were shattered 100 meters in the air. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air again. So powerful. Everyone had seen Tamamonome's strength. Therefore, they were already used to it. But Qin Zhao was actually on par with Tamamonome. He wasn't any weaker than Tamamonome. This made them turn pale with fright. Is that all you've got? Qin Zhao smiled at Tamamonome. If you don't use your real body, I'll really kill you. That's all. Tamamonome waved her 9 tails. Behind her, a large amount of miasma appeared. Then, Tamamonome's clones appeared in the miasma. 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, there were countless clones. Some were flying in the air, while others were standing on the ground. They were all in different poses and had extraordinary auras. What do you think of this? Hikari Yoko's face was pale. Nagasaka Reiko was shaking in fear. No matter how strong Qin Zhao was, he was just one person, but Tamamonome could have thousands of clones. How could they fight? They couldn't win at all. A great demon was indeed a great demon. Every single one of his methods was so shocking. Any spell could shock the world. Qin Zhao lifted his arm and pointed at Tamamonome. 7,000 stone swords appeared in the sky above Qin Zhao. Each stone sword radiated with a piercing murderous intent. The moment Qin Zhao's move appeared, everyone's expressions froze. Disbelief was written all over their faces. Tamamonome's thousands of clones faced Qin Zhao's thousands of flying swords. Was this man the legendary Huaxia sword immortal? Right now, Qin Zhao could control 7,000 stone swords even without using his clones. He could even control more stone swords. Tamamonome's real body narrowed its eyes. I can't believe humans nowadays have such powers. I'll take your words as a compliment. Qin Zhao smiled at Tamamonome. You're too happy too early. Go. Tens of thousands of Tamamonome's clones pounced at Qin Zhao or cast spells in the air. Qin Zhao ignored the spells. Standing where he was, he pushed his arms forward. The stone swords turned into a storm of blades, sweeping toward Tamamonome's army. Tamamonome was strong, but she couldn't be stronger than Old Turtle. Her clones weren't clones either. Each one only had 1% of her original strength. They touched the stone swords, or even the slightest bit of sword aura, and instantly turned into smoke. Everyone's faces were filled with horror. Bai Ryuko had thought that Qin Zhao was Zhang Tianyi's junior. So what if he was talented? But now, she realized that Qin Zhao wasn't just talented. Qin Zhao wasn't just talented. His peers had nowhere to go. Even her teacher, Zhang Tianyi, probably couldn't compare to Qin Zhao. Could it be that the supernatural world of Huaxia was already this powerful? An unknown young man actually had such strength. Jyotian Divine Emperor. The nine-tailed body suddenly spread open. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky turned into a huge fox mouth and bit down at Qin Zhao. At this moment, Yoko and the others, who were already 2 kilometers away, felt a chill run down their spines when they saw the terrifying attack behind them. How terrifying! Could that person really be a match for that kind of peerless great demon? Suddenly, he felt a gust of wind behind him. Immediately, the fox mouth formed by the dark clouds was shaken and scattered. Qin Zhao threw a punch and tore a hole in the dark clouds in the sky. But he immediately changed directions and charged at the nine-tailed body at full speed. The yin and yang powers in his body circulated rapidly, bringing even more surging immortal power. 100 meters away from the nine-tailed body, Qin Zhao threw a punch. The punch wasn't green like before. Instead, it was as dazzling as a star and the punch was as vast as the ocean. Danger! The nine-tailed body almost instinctively avoided the punch. The shadow of the fist swept past like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Everything that stood in its way disappeared in an instant. After charging more than 10 kilometers, the punch finally landed at the foot of Mount Fuji. The foot of Mount Fuji collapsed, leaving behind an eternal scar. The nine-tailed body looked back and couldn't help but gasp. Now, she was finally sure that the human before her was at the same level as her. No, in terms of combat ability, Qin Zhao was definitely above her. This time was different from last time. Last time, there were many people surrounding her. But none of them could truly match her. In the end, they just barely managed to seal her. But this time, the human before her could really kill her. Qin Zhao's attack missed. He approached the nine-tailed body and followed up with another punch. The nine-tailed body was hit solidly this time. The nine-tailed body's huge body was sent flying. Qin Zhao pressed forward again and threw a punch from above. Boom! The ground was shaking in the fierce battle between the human and the demon. Smoke had already filled the entire forest. Apart from Hakui, Yoko and the others, no one knew what was happening in the dust. They could only feel the shock waves spreading out wave after wave. Some people couldn't dodge in time and were affected by the shock waves. In the end, there was nothing left of them. Hakui, Yoko and the others had already escaped 20 kilometers away. Right now, they were standing on a road that had long been sealed, looking down at the forest of Aoki Plains below. In the center of the forest, the battle was still going on. Every impact was shocking to the eyes. It wasn't like a battle humans should have at all. It was completely different from the battle they'd imagined. It was the ultimate manifestation of destruction. Mount Fuji was still showing the ultimate power of nature. Chapter 1728. I'm starting to admire those who were able to seal you 1,000 years ago. They're really amazing. Qin Zhao sighed as he looked at the nine-tailed true form. Are you going to admit defeat now? The nine-tailed true body was panting. Qin Zhao's body was too tough. When Qin Zhao was in his normal state, she could even hurt him in her human form. However, after Qin Zhao used the mighty miracle god, Qin Zhao's body was almost indestructible. To be honest, Qin Zhao had a headache too. Even if he could fight better than Tamamo no Mei. But he didn't have the power to absolutely surpass her. Therefore, it was impossible for him to kill her. There was another way, and that was to seal her. But what Qin Zhao lacked the most was seals. At this moment, a whistling sound came from the sky. Both Qin Zhao and Nine-Tailed looked up. They were 3 F-22 fighter jets, probably from the US military. Tamamo no Mei stretched out her claws and clawed at him from a distance of more than 10 kilometers. The dark cloud turned into a giant claw and grabbed the 3 American fighter jets. Boom, boom, boom. Tamamo looked at him. Do you still want to fight? Let's fight for a while longer, Chen Zhao said honestly. If there's really no other way, we'll go home and find our own mothers. Chen Zhao could only give it a try to live up to the Japanese government's pay. Chen Zhao couldn't really risk his life. Actually, in this battle, Chen Zhao and Tamamo had more or less figured out each other's strength. In terms of destructive power and area of effect attacks, Tamamo no Mae was truly amazing. It was impossible for her to sink Japan, but given enough time, she might really be able to flatten the entire Japan. Of course, if that really happened, a nuclear strike would probably come down. But in terms of single-target damage, Tamamo no Mae was much weaker than Chen Zhao. All of Tamamo no Mae's attacks were useless against Chen Zhao's body. That was why Tamamo no Mae was having a headache. He took out the black trident. Tamamo no Mae's hair stood on end. I'm a little tired. Let's fight another day. Tamamo no Mae's figure suddenly turned into a ray of light. His speed was so fast that it made one's hair stand on end. Even Chen Zhao couldn't catch up. Chen Zhao was dumbfounded. Why did he suddenly run? Wait. She's afraid of my weapon? The black trident had been modified by Old Turtle. Other than feeling heavy, Chen Zhao didn't feel anything else. However, he was able to scare Tamamo no Mae away. Could this thing really kill her? Chen Zhao silently put away the black trident. He took out his phone. Hello, Mr. Zhang, it's over. What do you think? He won. Or did you lose? Tamamo no Mae ran away. Ran away. I can't kill her. I used everything I had but couldn't do anything to her. She's almost immortal now. He didn't explain the actual situation. After all, it was better to be cautious. Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi weren't that close. Alright, it's not our country's business anyway. After this, I'm even with the Japanese government. Zhang Tianyi didn't care about that. If he could kill them all, that would naturally be the best. Since he couldn't kill it, there was nothing he could do. The next day, the entire world was flooded by a piece of news. Japan's Mount Fuji, which had been asleep for 300 years, erupted. Tokyo was almost submerged in volcanic ash. This disaster also caused a lot of casualties. Of course, under the Japanese government's deliberate push. Other news did not have much of an impact. That night, Tamamo no Mae's appearance wasn't completely unknown. But in the end, under the joint efforts of the government and the supernatural world, things seemed to have calmed down a little. This time, the Japanese spirit world had suffered heavy losses. The 9 great shrines suffered the most casualties, and the spiritualists among the people also suffered great losses. However, this was an area where paranormal activity was active. It wasn't that there were a lot of spiritualists left, but that no matter how great the losses were, they could recover their vitality in a short period of time. This was the advantage of being in a supernatural region. The foundation was there, unless everyone was dead. Otherwise, he would be able to recover in a few years or even a decade. If they were in a supernatural desert like North America, if half of them died, half of the spiritualists would be gone. He might not be able to recover even after a few decades. However, because of the eruption of Mount Fuji, the entire city of Tokyo is now closed. Because of the volcanic ash falling with the rain, as long as they went out, their faces would be covered in dirt. They even had to use a purifier indoors. The most unfortunate thing was that all the airports were grounded. He couldn't leave even if he wanted to. Furthermore, it would be sealed for at least a week. The eruption of Mount Fuji didn't just affect Tokyo. Almost half of Dongying was affected. More than 20 airports were grounded. If Qin Zhao wanted to leave Japan, he had to go to another city. Speaking of which, Tokyo was really a bit chaotic right now. Because all the shops were closed, some lawbreakers began to run rampant. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't plan to return to Los Angeles for now. There was one thing he hadn't done yet. 3 days later, Zhang Tianyi was going to return the Yasukani no Magatama to the Japanese royal family. Zhang Tianyi had already forged in Yasukani no Magatama. Qin Zhao had seen it before, so he could definitely pass it off as the real one. President, Tokyo Grand Witch Yoko from the Grand Shrine is here to visit, West said, running to Qin Zhao. Invite her in, Qin Zhao said. Yoko came with Nagasaka Reiko. Both of them were wearing traditional witch attire. Their attitudes were even more humble and respectful. Mr. Qin, hello. Yoko looked old. Chapter 1729. How smart was Hikari Yoko? Back then, she had gone to China by herself. That was still a time of war. China and Japan were like fire and water. Hikari Yoko had relied on her own persistence to make Zhang Tianyi accept her as a student. Now, she saw Qin Zhao again. Of course, she couldn't be his student again. But her granddaughter could. The Tokyo Grand Shrine had suffered heavy losses. It would take at least 20 years to recover. And her granddaughter, Nagasaka Reiko, was bound to take over the Tokyo Grand Shrine. If she could have a backer like Qin Zhao, then her position would be very stable. Even though Nagasaka Reiko had a pure bloodline after she died, then the other branches might come to take over. Whether it was the royal family or a shrine like theirs, it was a problem that couldn't be ignored. Just like how she had taken over the position of witch back then. As a woman with a different surname, she had married into the Nagasaka family. She had received difficulties from the other branches of the Nagasaka family. If Zhang Tianyi hadn't been there to support her. At the time, she had doubted if she could have persevered. And in the future, Nagasaka Reiko would definitely encounter the same problem as her. Even her bloodline couldn't defeat the ambitions of the other branches. So, she had to prepare for Nagasaka Reiko. Back then, Zhang Tianyi had supported her. But after she died and Nagasaka Reiko took over as Magus, Zhang Tianyi had no reason to appear. So, finding a strong backer for Nagasaka Reiko had become a top priority. Without a doubt, Qin Zhao was the best candidate. Mr. Qin, you might not believe it, but Reiko is Dongye Tianqi's niece. Ha! They're that close. Qin Zhao hadn't expected this. If that was the case, he could consider accepting Nagasaka Reiko. The association had always been generous to their own people. Dongye Tianqi had joined the association later. But no matter what, he was still one of them. Yes, Dongye Tianqi is my nephew, so according to kinship, he's also Reiko's uncle. There was a huge difference between a nephew and a nephew. The nephew should be the child of Bairi Yoko's cousin, which was already a different surname. Moreover, Nagasaka Reiko's surname wasn't Hikari, so the blood difference was even greater. Their bloodline was 6 or 7 generations apart. Were they considered relatives? It wouldn't be a problem if the two families were close. But if the two families didn't have any contact with each other, what kind of relatives were they? Of course, Qin Zhao still had to ask for Dongye Tianqi's opinion. West, call Higashino Tianqi over. After all, Higashino Tianqi is Ms. Yoko's nephew. Since Ms. Yoko is here, how can he not pay a visit to his elders? Yes, guild leader. West was actually going over to ask for Dongye Tianqi's opinion. If Dongye Tianqi was willing to be the guide, it would not be a problem for Nagasaka Reiko to join the association. Donya Tianchi, when Nagasaka Reiko comes to LV, you'll be in charge of observing her for a while. If you think she's okay, you'll be her referral to join the supernatural organization. Hi, President. Donya Tianchi and Yoko Shiranui were old friends, but he also knew who he was loyal to. As long as it did not harm Qin Zhao and the association's interests, he obviously hoped to gain a favor. How's the situation in Tokyo these 2 days? Still chaotic. Not only are there criminals, but monsters are also very active. Any news of Tamamo no Mae? Qin Zhao asked. To be honest, after Tamamo no Mae escaped from the forest of Aoki Plains, it was basically impossible to destroy her. From now on, Tamamo no Mae could fly as high as she wanted. Even if Tamamo no Mae appeared before Qin Zhao now, he could not fight her in the city. Unless Qin Zhao did not care about the consequences and destroyed Tokyo. Both he and Tamamo no Mae had the destructive power of nuclear weapons. If they fought, the world would collapse. Chapter 1730. President, the kid you bullied the other day seems to be here. Have I bullied kids recently? West turned his head away, not wanting to continue talking to Qin Zhao. Corey, why are you here? Feilai and Portia were very happy to see Chiyo Corey. However, they turned to look at Chiyo Tsukasa. Is she your sister? You two look alike. Yes, she's my sister, Knight. Chiyo Corey nodded. Chiyo Corey now knew exactly what had happened. Of course, if it was someone else, she would still maintain her attitude. But now, she had to lower her head before Qin Zhao. Because she didn't know whether Qin Zhao had let it go or not. If Qin Zhao still hated her sister, even she couldn't protect Chiyo Tsukasa. So, she had to bring Chiyo Tsukasa here to apologize. Is Mr. Qin here? You're looking for Qin. Yes, Knight did something wrong, so I need to bring her here to apologize to Mr. Qin. It's okay, Feilai said, smiling. He won't argue with kids. Chiyo Tsukasa lowered her head. She'd been threatened by Chiyo Corey for the entire night. As a 16-year-old girl, she'd been terrified. Chiyo Corey brought her to every room on this floor. Some rooms were open, and she saw a few familiar figures. They were all people she'd seen that day. She felt that the entire hotel had been taken over by gangsters. Miss Chiyo, why are you here? Qin Zhao walked in with a smile and asked, even though he already knew the answer. Mr. Qin, I'm very sorry for the previous offense. I brought Knight here to apologize. Ha! Didn't you want to teach me a lesson 2 days ago? Chen, don't make things difficult for Corey, Feilai couldn't help but say. I didn't make things difficult for her. When did I make things difficult for her? Yeah, Portia said. The boss has always been tolerant. He won't make things difficult for Corey. Qin Zhao pursed his lips. Feilai and Portia teamed up. He clearly couldn't do anything to Chiyo Corey and Chiyo Tsukasa. Forget it. If there's nothing else, please go back. I won't pursue the past. Qin Zhao didn't plan on making things difficult for them. Qin Zhao wasn't an emperor. He couldn't kill anyone's family just because they offended him. Smokey, stay and talk to us for a while. That damned volcano has been erupting for the past 2 days, so we can't leave the hotel. Now, the entire city of Tokyo was gray, and through the glass windows, one could see the embers falling like falling snow. But it wasn't snow, it was volcanic ash. Inhaling it into the mouth and nose will cause respiratory damage. During these 2 days, every hospital in Tokyo was packed with people. All of them were symptoms caused by inhaling volcanic ash. Of course, Qin Zhao wouldn't let Feilai and the 2 kids go out in such a situation. With this kind of air quality, Chen Zhao really wanted to take his family away from Tokyo. This situation would not be alleviated until the next rainfall. The eruption of Mount Fuji brought immeasurable economic losses to Tokyo and even the entire Dongying. Chiyo Kaori looked at Chen Zhao, who shrugged and left the room. It was better to give the room to these women. He did not intend to stay here and join in the fun. President, look at the TV. I don't understand Japanese. What's there to see? Tokyo TV's program, West repeated. Chen Zhao glanced at West and turned on the TV. It was a talent show. In the show, the beautiful contestants all showed off their talents, singing and dancing. West, if you're lonely, go find a woman yourself. Henry has been to those places before. You can ask him to take you there. West rolled his eyes. I'm not asking you to watch this. Then which one? Just then, contestant 99 walked to the front of the stage. This woman was very beautiful, and her figure was perfect, especially her pair of long legs, which left a deep impression on people. After introducing herself, contestant 99 started to show off her talent. She danced a piece of dance full of ancient charm. Moreover, the dance was full of charm. Chen Zhao shuddered. Contestant 99 was clearly wearing clothes. But he felt a primal desire rising. This woman was too devilish. What's with this woman? She should be the nine-tailed fox, Tamamonome, West said. Are you sure? I don't remember her looking like this. President, is it hard to change her appearance for someone like her? That's true, but how can you be sure she's Tamamonome just from her performance? Others might not be able to tell, but I'm sure that she is, West said. Chen Zhao looked at West. He knew that West was good at sharp thinking and slow reaction. Why do you think she's Tamamonome? She can break through my calm thinking, West said. West said, her dance is filled with all kinds of hints. These seemingly simple dance moves make me unable to think calmly. This kind of power is unprecedented. She can drive any man crazy. Hearing West's words, Chen Zhao couldn't help but become serious. But then again, even if she was Tamamonome, he couldn't do anything to her. Perhaps she knew this, which was why she'd appeared. She might even let people know of her existence on purpose. But those who could find out her identity might not dare to expose the truth. Because if the Japanese government found out about her identity, they'd definitely start a war. If Tamamonome caused a ruckus in Tokyo, in that case, the problem would be huge. Tamamonome was like a moving nuclear warhead. The spiritualists in the spiritual world knew, but the government might not. So, she was sure that even if spiritualists knew her identity, they wouldn't dare to reveal the truth to the government. Chen Zhao thought about it carefully and realized that it was true. Even Chen Zhao didn't dare to reveal her identity. Whatever, Chen Zhao said, unconcerned. What does she want to do? It has nothing to do with us. Chapter 1731. Purely from an aesthetic point of view. The show was indeed good. Record it and send it to me. I'll study it. Actually, Chen Zhao didn't think that Tamamo could cause any trouble. Times were different now. If Tamamo wanted to continue doing whatever she wanted, in the end, it would be difficult for them to escape the fate of being destroyed or sealed. In the first round, Chen Zhao and Tamamonome couldn't do anything to each other. But it didn't mean that Tamamo was immortal. Chen Zhao didn't even dare to say that he was immortal. Humans hadn't found a way to kill her yet, but it didn't mean that they couldn't. Plus, humans had ultimate weapons. Chen Zhao estimated that he could withstand the explosion of a nuclear weapon with the equivalent of 10,000 tons of TNT now. But if humans were determined to destroy something, 100,000 tons, 1,000,000 tons, or even 10 million tons were possible. After all, decades ago, the former Russia had created a nuclear weapon with a yield of 100 million tons, Big Ivan. The current level of technology was many times higher than it was a few decades ago. This was no longer a world of monsters. It was ruled by humans. Even if Tamamo was hiding in a crowded city, humans would kill without caring about the casualties. That day in the forest of Greenwood Plains, Tamamo realized that something was wrong and immediately flew away. This meant that she wasn't a mindless monster. She was smarter than most monsters and even more intelligent than most humans. So, Chen Zhao didn't think that she would cause a huge commotion. A heavy downpour completely washed the entire Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of tons of volcanic ash were washed into the sewers. The entire city looked brand new. The citizens and tourists who had been suppressed for almost a week finally released their strong desire to shop. All the malls, supermarkets, restaurants, and even bars were filled with people. People enjoyed shopping like crazy, as if they were celebrating a festival. Zhang Tianyi strolled in the Japanese palace, the East Imperial Garden. This was the modern royal residence. A royal servant followed beside Zhang Tianyi. The outer area of the Imperial Garden was for tourists. However, the inner area wasn't open to the public. Just then, a man in hunting clothes walked out. The man's makeup was slightly feminine. He held a folding fan in his hand. He was a member of the royal family, Minamiya. In Japan, the Minamiya and the Abe family were known as the two heroes of Japan. They had both risen during the Heian era and had been worshipped by the royal family for generations. Greetings, celestial teacher Zhang. Minamiya had a high status, but he couldn't be arrogant before Zhang Tianyi. Of course, even though Zhang Tianyi had a high status, the current emperor of Japan wouldn't see him. Minamiya was the best person to meet and receive him. Hello, Mr. Minamiya. Zhang Tianyi had a smile on his face. This time, I'm here mainly to return your royal family's national treasure. Yuan Minamiya was stunned and looked at Zhang Tianyi in astonishment. Celestial teacher, what? The Yasukov Magatov of Japan of Z, how can we do that? We promised it to the heavenly master. Celestial two of the emperor of two of to you. He. Of hand, he. Genomiya was obviously happy that the Yasukov Magatov of the emperor had returned to the emperor. Of course, he still had to make excuses on the surface. Genomiya opened the brocade box. Seeing the Yasukov Magatov inside, he was even more assured. If Zhang Tianyi didn't return the Yasukov Magatov, he might have to wait for a few more years. After Zhang Tianyi reached the end of his life, he could ask for it back through political means. Just then, a wave of demonic aura spread over Zhang Tianyi, and Genomiya's expressions changed drastically. Zhang Tianyi looked at Genomiya. Where did the demonic aura come from? Genomiya's face was also filled with astonishment. This was the imperial palace, where the royal family lived. It was impossible for a monster to come in. Just then, a figure flashed past at an extremely fast speed. Oh no! Zhang Tianyi slapped out. The figure was sent flying. A strange look flashed across Zhang Tianyi's eyes. It wasn't Chen Zhao. It was a fox demon, a white fox. Then, 9 more foxes jumped out. They surrounded Zhang Tianyi and Genomiya. A woman flew through the air. Of course, it was Tamamo no Mei. Tamamo no Mei was still barefoot, and her clothes were extravagant. One of the foxes flew past. Before Genomiya could react, Tamamo no Mei snatched the brocade box. Is this the new palace? Has the imperial family already weakened to such a degree? Tamamonome looked around the imperial palace as she held a brocade box in her hand. Demon, leave the Yasukov Magatov here. Zhang Tianyi shouted. Little old man, you're too weak. Tamamonome waved her hand, and a wave of demonic aura surged over. Zhang Tianyi pulled Genomiya over and shielded him behind him. Tamamonome waved her hand, and the 9 foxes circled around her. Then, he looked into the depths of the imperial palace. Found it. Tamamonome flew out. Oh no, heavenly teacher, stop her. Genomiya paled in fright. What is that place? That's where the Yada no Kagami and Kusanagi sword are kept. Zhang Tianyi was also shocked. He immediately charged out. Just then, a figure flew in front of Zhang Tianyi and blocked him. A few strands of Zhang Tianyi's hair were cut off. Zhang Tianyi immediately retreated. Looking closely, he saw that Chen Zhao had come. Both of them were making eye contact. Demon, get lost. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. Zhang Tianyi shouted. Don't even think of stopping my master's great plan. Take this. Zhang Tianyi immediately stood together with the white-faced ghost that Chen Zhao had turned into. Chen Zhao, what's going on? Chapter 1733. President, you shouldn't go. If you go, we won't have to go. I just want to watch, Chen Zhao said, pursing his lips. Plus, I've never been to Norway. President, you shouldn't go. Whether Chen Zhao went or not, whether he was there or not, were 2 completely different concepts. Fine. Actually, I just want to see Norway's scenery. After booking the entire flight, everyone had much more freedom on the plane. Portia was extremely impressed by Feilai. She took care of 2 kids by herself. Both little Gerlin and little Larissa were extremely noisy. Ever since they got on the plane, they hadn't been quiet. Chen Zhao didn't care at all. The 2 of them could do whatever they wanted to. Only Feilai would restrain them. However, Portia was more concerned about Chen Zhao's subordinates. All this time, Portia had thought that Chen Zhao was a gang leader. But after seeing Chen Zhao's subordinates, she realized that they didn't seem to have anything to do with gangs. They weren't gangs. For example, Klaus and the Lightning Squad. In the beginning, he looked like a gang killer. But soon, she realized that Klaus and the others were just old-fashioned. After all, they'd stayed under the same roof for a long time. She realized that Klaus and the others were more like retired soldiers. As for the others, there were old people, children, and women. They had no discipline or rules. They looked more like a big family. They didn't look like a gang with a clear hierarchy. So, she was even more curious. What exactly did they do? It was as if all kinds of strange people were mixed together. They didn't look like gangs or a company. Portia even felt that they weren't from the same company. They were more like friends traveling together. But she'd seen Chen Zhao, West, and a few others discussing something in the house. They were indeed showing the attitude of subordinates. West, what do you think about getting a plane? Chen Zhao asked. We have so many people. If we want to get a plane, it can't be small. President, do you want to buy it yourself or the association? West asked. I can pay too. I've made a lot of money recently, Chen Zhao said. But where do we keep the plane? Is it stored at the airport? I do have a way to get the construction permit for a civil airport, but even the construction of the lowest grade airport requires a lot of money. Don't think that an airport is just a runway and a parking apron. The runway of the airport was not an ordinary road. Even the road conditions of the expressway could not be compared to it. If a medium or large aircraft were to land and take off on an ordinary plane, it would directly cause an accident. Regardless of whether the plane was taking off or landing, the weight and speed of the plane would create a huge pressure. Ordinary roads simply couldn't withstand this kind of pressure, and the final result was damage to the road. However, the runway isn't made of regular concrete. It's a special high-strength cement. Most of the money for building an airport is spent on this cement. Building an airport. This was building an airport. Even a small airport was a huge project for his company. "Give me a budget," Chen Zhao said. "I'll evaluate it." "Okay, Mr. Chen." Felwood suppressed his excitement. "Oh, don't be careless with the Mirror Lake project. Build it as you should. There's no need to rush. The earliest construction for the private airport will start next year. There were only 2 months left until the new year. Even if they decided to build a private airport, it would take at least a few months of preparation." 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1734. I'm finally in Los Angeles. Chen Zhao let out a long sigh. This journey was so tiring. When Chen Zhao walked out of the exit, he saw Vestana and the others. He immediately went up to greet them. "Ms. Vestana, how are you?" When Vestana saw Chen Zhao, she couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. This guy really didn't die. Well, with his strength, it wasn't strange. Chen Zhao glanced at the dozen people behind Vestana. "Looks like you're missing a lot of people. Did you inhale too much volcanic ash?" Chen Zhao teased. Because they'd lost more than a dozen people, the psionic team had been in grief and anger. Now, they saw Chen Zhao come up to pick a fight. Everyone felt like they were about to be swallowed by anger. "Mr. Chen, don't you think it's too much to say that now?" Vestana was also angry. It wasn't a surprise that the mission had failed. After all, Vestana's original plan was to bring them here to see the world. Always moving around in North America had limited their horizons and strength. So, the original plan was to make them suffer some setbacks. Even if there were casualties, it was still part of the plan. In the end, their horizons had indeed broadened. But they were also frightened. Tamamo no Mei's appearance had the power to destroy the world. It made them truly understand the difference between the strong and the weak. Even the most arrogant tank and the others had wet their pants in fear. Tamamo no Mei's power had exceeded their understanding. But Tamamo no Mei hadn't targeted them at all. Just the shockwave of her attack had killed half of the psionic team. They'd practically pissed their pants as they escaped from the forest of Aoki Plains. There was also the battle with Tamamo no Mei. They'd heard that it was the Taoist master of the Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Sect, Zhang Tianyi. Even though they were separated by dozens of kilometers, they could still feel the destructive power of that battle. It also made them understand how powerful the two scariest existences in the world were. This also caused everyone's will to be very depressed. If the gap wasn't big, they could fight and surpass it. But that battle made them not know how to surpass or make up for it. Now, they were provoked by Chen Zhao again. Someone patted Chen Zhao's shoulder. West came to his side. "President, you're too much." "Am I?" You've gone too far." Wester took 2 steps forward. "Miss Vestana, I apologize for my president's words." "I'm sorry. President, we should go back." Portia did not understand what grudge Chen Zhao had with these people. The people on the other side were the same as Chen Zhao's group. There were people of all ages and genders. Vestana looked at his back and suddenly said, Mr. Chin, didn't you also escape? So, there's actually no difference between us. It's true that you guys didn't lose anyone, but you guys don't even have the courage to face danger. These spells are called secret techniques because there's an unbearable or even unacceptable price. That's why the user doesn't dare to publicize it. Oh, you can tell. She looks no different from a normal person, but I saw the rune on her hand. It should be some kind of Chinese spell. Chinese. Yes, Huaxia is the most active region in the supernatural world. Moreover, it has the most flourishing metaphysical sections. Moreover, they're completely different from the mystical sects in the West. For example, most of the sects in Japan have inherited the teachings of Huaxia, and that's how they've become the most active region in the supernatural world. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. He didn't react at all when his family came back. Chen Zhao went up and kicked Kalon off the chair. Ah. Mr. Chen. Why are you back? Chen Zhao's face darkened. This is my home. Why did I come back? Ah. I didn't mean that. Chen Zhao whistled. At the same time, he spread out his aura. All the pets felt Chen Zhao's presence. Chen Zhao looked at the pets gathering over one after another. Looks like you took good care of it. Of course, I didn't slack off, Kellen said proudly. Little Jerlin was already greeting the pets excitedly. Let's go. I'll see if you've been slacking off these days. Come, I'll surprise you. I've been sparring with Cerberus these days. Filled with confidence, Kalon stood before Chen Zhao. Then, 10 minutes later. Kalon's head was full of bruises. Looks like you haven't been too diligent. Chen Zhao looked at Kalon on the ground. Lying on the ground, Kalon looked at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, what did you do this time? Did you carry out a mission? Sort of, Chen Zhao said. It's also a deal. What kind of mission? Is it hard? Do you know about the Mount Fuji eruption in Japan? Yeah, it's been all over the city these days. Apparently, the Japanese government lost over $100 billion because of it. It's a huge loss. In fact, it was caused by a monster escaping from the seal. Chen Zhao didn't hide it. After all, the entire spiritual world knew about it. The news was just an explanation for normal people. Since Kalon was a spiritualist, there was no need to hide anything from him. Monster. What kind of monster? You don't even know what a monster is. Whatever, I'll go back and look it up in the dictionary. Mr. Chen, the monster you're talking about is a spiritual creature, right? Sort of. She can cause a volcano to erupt. She must be really powerful, right? Powerful. Powerful isn't enough to describe her power. She's like a moving nuclear bomb. If there's no restriction, she can even kill all of humanity. Kellen sucked in a breath of cold air. At his current level, he couldn't even begin to imagine what kind of terrifying existence that was. Is it unimaginable? Kalon nodded. It was indeed unimaginable. Don't even think about it. Don't think about surpassing her one day. Don't even think about risking your life if you meet her. In order to stop that peerless fox demon, we gathered 2,000 to 3,000 spirit controllers, but she easily killed more than 1,000 spirit controllers. Kalon shuddered. Chen Zhao continued, the strongest 9 shrines in Japan, with hundreds of people working together, couldn't even block one attack from her. Mr. Chen. What about you? How did you come back alive? Because I'm strong enough. I can't do anything to her, but I can protect myself. Kalon felt that Chen Zhao was also part of the group that had escaped. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't say it clearly for the sake of his reputation. So there's no one in the world who can deal with that fox demon. There are people who can deal with her, but not many. However, the real threat to her is mankind's ultimate weapon, nuclear weapons. I estimate that if a nuclear bomb with a yield of 1 million tons was dropped on her head, it would be enough to make her suffer. Even so, Kalon still felt that it was too exaggerated. A monster that could only be dealt with by humanity's superweapon. Kalon couldn't imagine how powerful that monster would have to be to need nuclear weapons to kill it. Either way, he only needed a high-explosive grenade. That would probably be enough. The difference was more than 10 million times. Mr. Chen, do you think there's still a few people in the world who can deal with her? 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 1736. Hi, Gaia. Portia walked into Gaia's gym. This place of yours sure isn't small. Portia was touring Gaia's gym. What, you don't have work today? I don't have anything to do today. If I don't have anything to do, I won't follow him. Do you want to get a gym card here? Can you give it to me for free because of our relationship? Actually, we're not that close. Gaia smiled at Portia. In the end, Portia didn't get a gym card here. She had plenty of time, but it wasn't fixed. Hello, are you Mr. Chen's assistant? Yes, I am. May I know who you are? I'm Felwood Cisco from a construction company. I'm sending you a document. Please pass it to Mr. Chen. Okay. After hanging up, Portia looked at Gaia. I have a job again. Okay. Remember to come here next time. If you're willing to give me a gym card for free, I'll be happy to come here. Ever since Portia returned to LA, she didn't dare to spend money casually anymore. She did some calculations and realized that she'd spent at least $200,000 in Japan. Apart from paying off her credit card, she also owed Chen Zhao a huge sum of $150,000. Portia didn't dare to spend a single cent recklessly. As for her current job, if she dared to do it carelessly, Chen Zhao would probably make her corpse strewn on the streets tomorrow. Portia opened the document. It was a price list, a private airport construction evaluation report, and a budget. Among them, there were 4 different specifications, all of which were design specifications for medium and small airports. The cheapest of these 4 specifications cost $300 million, and the most expensive one cost $630 million. Portia sucked in a breath of cold air. Her boss was way too rich. Portia had heard Chen Zhao mention buying a private plane a few times before. But buying a private plane and building a private airport were 2 different concepts. Unless it was a giant in the sky, the cheapest one was only a few dozen million, while the expensive one was around 100 million. But a private airport was different. The cheapest one was already $300 million. Including the land, the price would double. Portia went to Mingyue Villa and passed the document to Chen Zhao. Boss, this is a document from Felwood Cisco. Take a look. Okay, got it. Chen Zhao was sparring with Fei Lai, who was punching and kicking Chen Zhao. This was the first time Portia had seen Fei Lai fight. In fact, Fei Lai's body was already very outstanding. However, because she was an ordinary person, the notification could not be raised too much. Because there was no protection from magic power, if one's physique was increased too much, deformities would appear. Even so, Fei Lai's constitution was still 4 times that of a normal person. After all, Chen Zhao would provide Fei Lai with food from big dishes whenever he was at home. The food wouldn't cause any changes to Fei Lai's body structure. However, this kind of influence was subtle. This kind of change would quietly happen in Feilai's body. Feilai preferred to fight with gloves. She didn't like direct contact with her fists. That would leave calluses, and she didn't want her skin to become rough. Plus, Chen Zhao's skin was really thick. If she didn't protect him, her hand would be badly hurt. After a while, Feilai finally stopped attacking. Portia, do you want to try? I don't think so. Portia really wanted to try how it felt to beat the boss. However, after thinking about it, she still gave up this tempting thought. It's fine. Come and try. Portia looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shrugged. Come on. In the end, Portia still put on the gloves. She didn't have any fighting foundation, so her punches were no different from a normal woman's. Your arms have to be level with your shoulders, Chen Zhao reminded. Punch at a 90-degree angle and use the flexibility of your joints. Portia tried again. She felt like she was punching a wall. Chen Zhao covered his face with his arms. At the same time, he said, you can try attacking from other angles. Your straight punches are too monotonous. After 10 minutes, Portia was so tired that she was covered in sweat. I can't anymore. Panting, Portia put her hands on her hips. Let's go swim at the beach. Feilai pulled Portia away. Portia was very envious of Feilai's stamina and body. There was almost no excess fat on Feilai's body. Her muscles didn't bulge exaggeratedly. However, she gave off a streamlined sense of beauty. Although she was envious, Portia knew that she couldn't compare to Feilai. Feilai could shop, work out, and even eat nutritious meals with relish. She was someone who had to work hard for her life. She also heard that Feilai was going back to the coastal rescue team. It was still a job, but Feilai's job was her interest. Her job was to make a living. In the evening, Feilai asked Portia to stay for dinner before Portia left. Hey, Miss Portia, there's a small role tomorrow. You can come and try it. The person who called Portia was from the Screen Actors Union. Although Portia was an amateur actress, she still registered with the union. Actually, it was very simple to register as a member. You just had to have at least one role, even if you didn't even have a proper face. You just had to be willing to pay $1,000 a year. Of course, there were benefits too. Members of the Screen Actors Union could enjoy some internal resources. At the same time, they had a guaranteed salary. However, being a member of the Screen Actors Union wasn't all good. For example, the producers of some blockbusters didn't like to use small actors from the Screen Actors Union. Because actors from the Screen Actors Union had to follow the rules, such as a guaranteed salary, working hours, and at least 1 second of close-up scenes. Of course, with rules and a bottom line, it also meant that the actors from the Screen Actors Union were better than those who were pulled from the streets or became actors out of interest. When Portia heard the news, she was overjoyed. She already started to imagine what her new role would be like. How long the close-up scenes would be, whether there would be any lines, whether it would be a big production, and so on. In fact, it was this kind of dream and fantasy that supported most actors who weren't famous clenched their teeth and persevered. As soon as she got up, she heard a tearing sound. It turned out that Elisa had deliberately stepped on the corner of Portia's dress. In an instant, half of Portia's clothes were torn. The originally sexy and dignified dress now made her look like a beggar. Ha! Laughter came from the audition studio. Ah! Portia covered her face and fled the scene. In fact, both the two assistant directors and the actors auditioning knew what had happened. And this kind of thing happened too many times in the audition studio, so many that they were already numb to it. However, they wouldn't feel sympathy for the actress who was schemed against. They could only say that she didn't have the mentality of a real actress. Jiutian Shenhuang. I don't know, but I know the address. It's on set 122 in Hollywood. I'll call and ask, Chen Zhao said. How's Portia now? She's already asleep. Chen Zhao thought for a moment and picked up the phone. Rasfa, it's me. Chen, I heard that you went to Japan. I remember that the volcano erupted there. Weren't you trapped there? The lockdown was lifted long ago. You still don't know. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. I want to ask you something. Tell me, what is it? Do you know what movie is being filmed at Hollywood Studio 122? Studio 122. Let me check. After a few minutes of silence, Rasfa said, It's James' new movie, Apocalypse Now. Why do you ask? It's James' movie. Yeah, you don't know. I don't know either. Never mind, I'll call James. Okay, our movie is going to be released soon. Are you paying attention? It's not released yet. The premiere is on September 29th. Are you and Feilai coming? Nah, we're not celebrities. We won't go on the red carpet. After chatting with Rasfa for a while, Chen Zhao hung up and dialed James' number. James, it's Chen. Chen, how come you're free to call me? I heard that your new movie started filming. Is that right? Yeah. Why? Do you want to be a guest? No, I have a friend who went to your crew for an audition today. When she came back, she was in bad condition. It seems like something happened to her. Can you help me look into it? I want to know what happened. No problem. What's your friend's name? I'll call you later. Portia. About 20 minutes later, James called Chen Zhao back. This kind of thing was not difficult to investigate. After all, when it happened in public. Dozens of actors and staff at the scene saw what happened. In the morning, Portia found herself in an unfamiliar environment. But she soon knew where she was. Although she was a little drunk, Portia still couldn't let go of the humiliating experience the day before. Knock, knock. Portia, are you up? Feilai's voice came from outside the door. Portia didn't really want to respond. Eventually, she said, Feilai, come in. Portia, how do you feel? Not good. I feel like my head is going to explode. Portia got off the bed and stretched. Feilai, why am I here? You went to the police station and Chen had someone send you here. Did I say anything yesterday? No, you were already drunk when you came back. I had to spend a lot of effort to wash you. You fell asleep not long after. Feilai didn't want to open Portia's wound. Portia still felt embarrassed. Thank you. Sorry for the trouble. It's just a small thing, Feilai said. Get up. You'll feel better after eating breakfast. When Portia arrived at the dining room, she realized that Chen Zhao and Feilai's family's breakfast was terrifyingly sumptuous. It was even more sumptuous than the breakfast provided by the hotel. She really didn't understand how much time Chen Zhao and Feilai had spent preparing breakfast. 9 Heavens Divine King. Chapter 1739. Portia was very lucky. Chen Zhao had given her 2 days off. Of course, it was Feilai who had spoken. Chen Zhao didn't say anything. But Portia knew that Chen Zhao and Feilai were taking care of her. Portia indeed felt that she was in a bad state today. She couldn't let go of the stain in her life yesterday. Portia didn't know how she spent the whole day. Her mind would never be able to forget the humiliating experience yesterday. Just then, Portia's phone rang. "Are you Miss Portia?" "I am. May I know who you are?" "I'm the assistant director of Apocalypse Revelation. I think you're very suitable for a role in our movie. Are you interested?" "Yes." Portia paused. Suddenly, she calmed down again. He's a liar. He's definitely a liar. If the movie crew really needed to choose an actor, the director or assistant director couldn't call the actor directly. If it was a famous actor, it might be possible. But she'd only gotten a minor role. The assistant director couldn't call her directly. "You liar. I'm not interested in any role." After that, Portia hung up the phone. Liar. He didn't even know the rules of Hollywood and wanted to trick her. Was she really that easy to trick? On the other side, the assistant director looked at the phone in shock. He turned around and looked at James. "How was it? Did she agree?" "Mr. James, she thought I was a liar and hung up," the assistant director said gloomily. "Give me the phone. I'll call her myself." James called Portia. "Hi, Miss Portia. I'm James." "Which James? Have you seen Animal Mart?" "Yes." "Are you going to tell me that you're the director of Animal Mart?" Portia sneered. She wasn't that stupid. Animal Mart was one of the most popular movies last year. Director James became famous overnight and became an upstart director in Hollywood. Many of his experiences were also dug up. For example, he'd once been Steven's assistant for more than 20 years. Of course she knew James' name. But she didn't believe that James would call her personally. Portia wanted to be famous. But she didn't believe that James would call her. She was aware of her own limitations. "Yes, I'm that James. Mr. James, I don't have money, and I don't want to play with you anymore. Please stop harassing me, thank you," Portia said in disgust, then hung up. James was also depressed. After all, he was a famous director. He was actually treated as a swindler. James thought about it. Chen Zhao was his benefactor. Moreover, Chen Zhao had great influence on Rasfa and Steven. Also, Chen Zhao, Rasfa, and Steven's new movie was about to be released. If the investment for this movie is successful, then he would have more influence on Hollywood. Although James was famous now, it did not mean that he could ignore everything. Moreover, he had a good personal relationship with Chen Zhao. Thus, he suppressed his displeasure. He called Portia again. "Miss Portia, it's still me, James." "All right, James. What will it take for you to let me go?" Portia felt that she had nothing to do now. Since these films were going to continue pestering her, she would let them continue. It was a good way to kill time. Portia hoped from the bottom of her heart that this James was real. However, her rationality still told her that it was fake. He was a swindler. "Miss Portia, if you don't believe me, you can come to the set," James said. "It's the audition studio where you had your audition yesterday. We'll be filming here." Portia's heart jumped. She was a little tempted. There were two voices in her mind that kept controlling her heart. "Anyway, I won't ask you to transfer money, nor do I need your driver's license number or your credit card number." "Fine, I'll go and take a look." Portia felt uneasy. Was it real? No, that was impossible. Why would Director James call her personally? Was it a scam? As long as she made up her mind not to transfer money, even if the other party was a swindler, he would not succeed. Nevertheless, Portia still decided to drive to the Hollywood set. There was a huge set in Hollywood. Many studios were arranged neatly in the field. This was the most famous set in the world. Since the 1970s, after Hollywood's reformation, Hollywood movies had become famous all over the world. Hollywood movies became famous all over the world, and this place became the most famous and developed filming location in the world. Portia arrived outside the studio where she had auditioned yesterday. She was still a little hesitant. She was worried that the more hopeful she was, the more disappointed she would be. However, in the end, she plucked up her courage and walked into the studio. At this time, the studio was no longer the same as it was yesterday. After entering the set, she saw an area that had been transformed into an office. There were more than a dozen people and a few actors there, and they were filming. Portia hesitated as she walked in that direction. Just then, Alyssa saw Portia. Alyssa seemed to have just finished filming a set of scenes and immediately walked towards Portia. "Hey, Portia, why are you here again? By the way, we're filming here. How did you get in?" Alyssa said in a mocking tone. "You're not here to try your luck, are you? Hee hee." Portia, of course, knew that it was Alyssa who played tricks yesterday. That was why she made a fool of herself in public. Portia tried her best to restrain her anger as she sized up the interior of the studio in silence. She seemed to be looking for something. "Hee hee. Don't tell me you knew that Mr. James would come to the studio today, so you came looking for an opportunity. Don't be silly, Portia. Why would James want to see you?" Portia's expression was uncertain. Could it be that this scam was deliberately arranged by Alyssa? Did she deliberately trick her here and then humiliate her? "You bitch." Portia finally couldn't help but slap Alyssa in the face. Alyssa was stunned.